Hello, it's Jesse here, and we're back at Jesse's Vintage Garage, and we're working on some stuff here on the Norton Mk3 project we got coming up. We did a couple videos before on the Norton Mk3, and we're to a stage so we're going to start working on some more parts like the transmission and start actually building the bike. Right here, of course, we have a starter for a Mk3, and in a previous video where we actually rebuilt and talked about the actual problems with the starter in Mk3s. We got to ask some questions about the certain parts, because we didn't really go into detail on some of the parts because we had already previously done some stuff with them before we started actually video recording everything we do. So now we're going to talk about some of the components because we were asked about them, and it's good information for everybody. So we're just going to try to go into detail here and talk about it. So right here in front of us, we have a couple starters. This is actually the rebuilt starter from that previous video where we talked about the starter. So we rebuilt it. It's ready to go. We'll probably use this on the Mk3 project we got coming up. And this is the starter that I think came with the bike. And it's actually a functioning starter. We tested it, and it works really well too. And it's been rebuilt.
Or it's all original.
Or it's all original. Yeah, like he says, or it's all original. But it's not rebuilt like we did this one. And we're going to go into detail on the nice things about this one compared to the original type starters. So here we go, I guess.
These are the major parts right here. Other than the pieces that's missing out of this. See that what's missing here is the brush holder, the brush springs, of course the brushes, and and the brushes, and these two washers. There's a waffle washer and a round washer. The waffle washer, I think I can get that out of here. It's probably not open. Anyway, what happens here is the waffle washer goes with the curled end away from the commutator. Then the flat washer, so it would go opposite. This is turned the wrong way. This needs to be. I don't want to open this bag because it's sealed. So it would go on like this with the flat washer, but this flipped over. And what that does is it keeps tension in here and keeps the armature this way all the time as it's spinning. Okay, so it's part of the rebuild. And the reason that those are new is because the old one is all rusted and the holes wallowed out. And that's just what happens to them. The other thing that happens to these is the shaft in the end gets wore real bad. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can
see that wobble in there.
Yep. It never work right.
So what happens is that gets real loose. And you see this is all pitted.
Oh yeah. And
so a new one is still loose. Okay. So when this happens, if this is a good armature, well, which it does work. The only problem with it is this is loose. And so when this is loose,
well, you can't add material to that. So
right. So what you have to do is you got to chuck this up and smooth this out. You don't have to get rid of all the little indents that are in, but you have to get around again, and you got to get it smooth. So don't take off any more than you have to. And then you either got to make a new brass bushing to put in here to replace it so it's tight again, or just with the correct working distance, tolerance, or you could go with a needle bearing,
which we did in this starter here.
This one was wore like that. Yes.
Yeah, and if you watch the video where we rebuilt this, you can see it, but we don't really go into detail about it. And this is where some of the questions that were asked. We're going to go into detail on that part.
The part number. I think we showed in the video that we put the needle bearing in.
Yeah, we pressed it in and everything. Yes, you were afraid that it wasn't gonna, you might crack it or whatever, but we had everything worked out.
The tolerances were great, and this works excellent. Now, Somebody else also noticed that I made a modification to this starter, but we didn't talk about it. And they're right, I didn't talk about it. What we did is we put a bearing up here. Okay? Typically, normally, these do not have a bearing here. They have a seal here. Okay? And that seal runs just on this with a brass bushing. And that just goes like this, and it spins around, keeps oil out. Okay?
And it probably worked well back then, but
well,
over time.
Two things with this. You got, when the starter goes to start, it puts, as soon as it starts to spin, it puts a lot of load onto this brass bushing, okay? And you can see all the brass dust there from the, you know, how hard it is to run on there. And it causes drag. You can hear it squeak, okay? Well, when this spins over, we got a ball bearing, a radial bearing in here that's sealed on both sides. And it just spins no matter how much pressure you put on it. And so it'll work better.
Yeah.
So in order to put that bearing in it, this is the bearing. It is a 6003-2RS, and that means 2 rubber seals. And it's this bearing right here. So what you got to do is you got to chuck this up in a lathe, and you got to cut all this off. And you got to mill into it the outer diameter of this bearing. And so you got to make it to where this bearing lightly presses in. But you only mill all the way to break through this. But you don't mill into this boss. This boss goes into the primary. And that keeps the bearing from falling out. See, because we only milled it up to this, if you look real close.
Yep. See how the outer diameter of the bearing is actually behind that boss. Yeah.
Yep. And that's what holds the bearing and keeps the armature from sliding out.
Okay, so for getting the depth here, we were going to go over that real quick.
The best way is to have a caliper, and what you need to do is this edge of this gear right here needs to be at the same amount in the same location that it is with the factory the way. So best way I do it is I take the tail end of I can use you can use a ruler, and you can go like that, or if you're careful, you can line up a tooth and go right down to there, and it's 370 thousandths that this gear is, this edge of this gear. So that way when you slide it in, it's running on the gear that's in the primary correctly. You don't want this in too far or out too far.
Right.
So what you do then is you put this in a lathe and you start necking this down. You know how you also measure the thickness of this bearing, and you have to keep necking it down until you can get the bearing into here, and this will slide into this like this basically, and then you measure it. Okay.
Right.
And so when we got done, we got 370 here also. So,
right.
So now I know that the armature sits at the same amount out on both of these starters, just the same as it was originally. Now you can't see where this gear rides on the primary gear that's inside because this slides in and covers it all up. There's no way to see it. So we can only assume that they already did the homework on that, and it's right.
Right.
So that's why I wanted to keep what it was.
There we go then, I guess. So hope that helps you.
If you don't go far enough, it don't have any working clearance. See, right now we have barely any back and forth, but it's plenty. It's my other Mark III over here has a starter that's modified just like this, and 2 other starters of friends of mine are modified just like this, and they work beautifully.
Yeah,
and
which we saw how well it worked in that last video when we rebuilt this starter. So you can look for that one, of course, again. But anyway.
And I have part numbers here for, you can buy these brush kits, the brand new brush kit. It comes with the tail bushing, the brushes, and a new set of springs, and a brush holder. Okay?
So
it doesn't come with the washer.
So seeing how you're talking about the brushes, there's people that think that 4 brushes is the answer to this starter because it never worked. But like we said in the other video where we rebuilt this starter, we talk about the actual problem with the starter, that why it didn't work as well. It's not the fact that there's only 2 brushes, and a Sportster starter or whatever, it has similar parts, but they're different as well. But you can run 4 brushes, but that's not really the answer to the problem.
No, the real answer to the problem was the cables were too small. When Norton brought out this starter in the Mark III, they used cables that were 10 gauge and 10 gauge stranded, which don't carry enough load. And so what happens is the amperage can't get through to it, so it wouldn't start the motor. Now, if you put number 4 gauge stranded wires on your battery to all 3 cables, if you put them nice big heavy cables, and I think it's 4 gauge instead of 10 gauge, and you put that on there, this 2 brush works so fast you can't even let go of the button fast enough, and it starts right up. And it doesn't matter if it's this one with the modified with the bearings, or if it's a stock one.
The bearing just makes it work better.
It's going to last longer.
And last longer as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Moisture won't get in as easy and stuff like that. And I was looking for more longevity out of this starter, and I think I got it.
Oh, yeah.
And so that is, this starter is ready to be rebuilt. Of course, we got to clean all this up, take the bushing out, put new brushes in it. These brushes are gone, but I got all that. And and we can mill this down and put this new bearing in there, and I can face this and either get the needle bearing like I did this one, or have a new one of these done up, made on the lathe out of a piece of brass or whatever bushing material.
Yeah.
Buy it. So you know, most of these parts are all readily available. I got this, and I got that little needle bearing, which I don't have one right now, but I have them.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the parts and where you can get them from, probably, and the what to look for. But we're not really promoting anything. We don't get paid for any sort of promotion. But this is just for pure knowledge purposes.
This is where I got it.
You can find them anywhere else, but this is where we got them from. So
yes, and
all right, so yeah, here we go. We're gonna talk about the parts.
yeah, this is an H. Sometimes my H's don't look like H's. Well, anyway, this is the part number is HK0912. It's a needle bearing. It's 9 millimeter by 13 millimeter by 12 millimeter. It costs $8.88 on Amazon. That's where I bought it. This brush set is actually made for, see, the Prestolite starter, 2-brush starter, was also used on Johnson and Evinrude outboard motors. And so these starter parts are readily available through for marine purposes. And it is the same starter, except the armature and the gear is different. And so the starter itself wouldn't work.
And this piece on the end, how it mounts or whatever.
Yeah, it's all different. Yeah. So, but this is the same, and all the brushes are the same. And if you tried to get them for a Norton, it's unavailable. It's been unavailable for 30 years. And so, but you can still get it. And so what it's called the Brush Starter Repair Kit. and it's sold by a company named Sierra. The part number is 18-6250, and it's a marine starter kit. It costs $37.55, and I got it on Amazon. Now, you can use this to look it up. You can buy it anywhere you want to. I think there's other places that sell it, and so it's up to you. And then same thing with this bearing. You can buy this bearing anywhere you buy bearings. It's a Timken, very good bearing. And so just buy it from your favorite place.
Yeah, and that was, we'll look at that again, since how we're talking about part numbers. 6003-2RS.
So
yeah. So hopefully that cleared the air on some of this stuff.
This works for us, and it works real well. These washers are available too. This is actually a Prestolite. It also comes from a marine place, and it comes as these two washers that actually go in here. And the Prestolite part number is, there it is wait a minute. There we go.
See it very well.
It's Prestolite 90-2077.
For the washer. And
Yeah, if
waffle washer.
if it's like mine, when you take these apart, this is so pitted up and rusted, and just terrible. I mean, it's just terrible how wore out they get, and just wobbled around, and just so you can buy that too. And it's nice to have that, because that keeps that pressure where it needs to be, and it keeps everything kind of taut. And so it depends upon if you're just rebuilding, or if you're going to modify and rebuild. I modified and rebuilt when I did this one, and I didn't do nothing to this one. I hooked it up, and it spins and works beautifully. And it probably would work on my bike for years and years. I don't know. I didn't take it apart to even look at it.
Yeah, but it's nice having a decent spare that's ready to go.
Yep.
In desperation if needed. And it's nice to have backup parts, and one ready to rebuild if we need to.
Yeah.
But we don't really need this right now, so
I don't need it.
So over time we'll just end up maybe fixing this up, or leave it as parts, or whatever. We'll see.
Or this stuff might get used in one of my other starters if the brushes wear back. You know, yeah. I bought it because at the time I was going to rebuild it and get it going.
Yeah, we just wanted a spare originally, but now since we got this Mark III project not that long ago, we're going to actually use that starter we rebuilt in that bike, like I said in the beginning. And then the starter that came with the bike, I think this was it, or if it's the other one we have over there, but one. It is this one? Yeah. We'll just say this is the spare now, so, but anyway.
And like I say, we could use this one in it too, it don't matter. But I'm planning on using this one.
Yeah. So I guess this kind of wraps this up. I guess if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to ask, or send comments or whatever, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible and talk to you. We're not professionals, but this is kind of how people rebuild stuff. We're not all professionals, but anyway, hope you enjoyed everything, and we'll see you again soon. We're gonna start working on this Mark III here coming up, so it's exciting. So we'll see you again.